Meta Q&A Part 5. Nobody agrees. So I got an email the other day, and the communication poses a plentitude of complex philosophical questions. So I'll go ahead and read the missive in its entirety. Then, after a brief cogitative entr'acte, we'll jump right in and start penetrating, responding to the query with concise, meticulous exactitude. The message comes from an entity traveling under the moniker of JunkFlex, and the message goes as follows, quote, JunkFlex. Hello, Metasage. I have been enjoying your channel off and on for a couple of years now. I do hope you have the time to communicate with me. I go about my life with a small circle of people that I come into contact with, none of which are willing to agree with my viewpoint. I participated in a Wechsler Adult Intelligence Test in 2010. It was the third version. The results were not normal. Everyone I tried to communicate my viewpoint on existence either can't or won't grasp it, no matter how verbosely I explain myself. This is what I've been saying to people. I am not convinced that anything exists because I do not believe that the substance of reality must adhere to my initial basic assumptions as a supposed entity within it. That one is more cunning because it states something about myself and my own beliefs, and they may be able to swallow it better by first seeing me in the predicament of my own viewpoint, then possibly apply that viewpoint to themselves on their own accord. And existence is but the preoccupation of the existence-centric mindset. People constantly have to reference a snippet of scientific theory that they have heard about, or they simply knock on the table in front of them and say, then how can this happen? Others will say, if I pinch you, it will hurt, suggesting that my sensation of physical discomfort or pain is somehow evidence. Even though the further I think about this topic, the blurrier the logic seems to get in my head. I am confident that I need very little information, but rather only reasoning with a healthy touch of abstraction to get the answer. It's like I'm seeing a blurry version of the logical construct from behind textured glass. I guess this is why many people entering the realm of armchair philosophy will disguise their ideas as questions. So to end this email, I will spout a few of those questions for you. Isn't infinite everything a little too messy to be plausible? Could the premise of existence be an immature notion? Why would our surroundings be as simple as we are? Players of a game must adhere to the rules of the game, but does the game also have to adhere to those same rules? Could the purposelessness of everything be an indicator that it does not actually exist? In closing, I would just like to mention that I did watch your video on existentialism and nihilism, and it was comforting to me to listen to. At the end, however, you said something about my viewpoint. Absurdism, existentialism, and nihilism, July 15th, 2016. Quote, and if you want to be stubborn and deny your own existence, then who, may I ask, is making this denial? Unquote. And my answer to your question is with my last question. Can everything actually exist within nothing? Kind regards, JunkFlex, David. Unquote. Hitherto inquisitive communication. Hereafter assiduous response. And right off the bat, before we go any further, I want to suspend and smite down a certain phrase that was used several times in this transmission. And that's this term, viewpoint. Quote, none of my friends are willing to agree with my viewpoint. Everyone I tried to communicate my viewpoint on existence either can't or won't grasp it. They may be able to swallow it better by first seeing me in the predicament of my own viewpoint, then possibly apply that viewpoint to themselves on their own accord. At the end, however, you said something about my viewpoint. Unquote. All right, JunkFlex. I appreciate your interest in philosophy. It's a good sign. It shows that you might have the aptitude to continue on and perhaps one day uncover the truth. But it's going to involve a little more than acquiring a viewpoint. Indeed, reaching the pass and crawling our way through the treacherous mountains of lies and deception and finding a way out to total freedom will involve the surrender of all viewpoints. For, you see, a viewpoint is but personal intellectualism, all but mere thoughts and beliefs inside one's head. An opinion. Narrating dialogue that has absolutely no bearing on the actual truth, which, if all parties involved have surrendered their viewpoints, will never be in variation and cannot be disagreed upon under any circumstance. And that's one of the world's biggest problems right now. This stupid idea that all beliefs should be afforded equal station and respectability, irrespective of their inherent truth values. That we cannot discriminate against ideas that enable one to choose to hide in a delusion. That we must expend great time and effort to protect and support everyone's particular fantasy bubble. That important rights and responsibilities will be granted to those who refuse to participate in the truth and stubbornly cling to falsehoods, even to the point of detriment and degradation to others. This is what you think we should be fighting to uphold. So yeah, in case it managed to escape your attention, nobody agrees. And that can't be stated enough. It's nice that they think that they've got that luxury, isn't it? Or, how do they say? We agree to disagree. That's it. You gotta love that one. We can agree to disagree. In other words, we can easily avoid the truth by all agreeing to disagree about which particular lies we are holding as beliefs. Isn't that such an efficient use of freedom? We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all lies men tell are created equal. Hey, nobody agrees. Except that we all agree to assume falsehoods, any falsehoods, over acknowledgement of the fundamental truth. That's the only thing we agree on wholeheartedly. But don't ever bring this up. It's an unconscious default whose prevalence must be ignored in order to preserve it. It's an unspoken rule of engagement, and you are not allowed to operate outside of it. Thus, it's no real surprise that JunkFlex's friends don't agree with him about existence. Not that he's taking any solid position about it, mind you. At least not with his first irresolution. Here, he's basically just taking on the role of a skeptic. So there's really not much for his friends to agree or disagree with, even though they would probably disagree with him anyway, even if he took a position. And why is that? Because, once again, nobody agrees. And certainly no one agrees about existence. And that's what this is basically about, isn't it? Existence. It's not a question of a universe or a God. Those are just ideas in your head. It's a question of existence. What is existence exactly? And how is this existence realized existentially? We want so badly for it to be attributable to something extrinsic, don't we? Otherwise, we might have to shoulder some responsibility. And we can't have that under any circumstance. So we can't expect to ever come to rightly understand the nature of existence if we can't first establish the proper underlying foundation. And by proper, I mean what's real and true, as opposed to an egoic delusion. That's a huge difference. This is about embracing the undeniable base unconditionally, not finding solace in a substitution, wherein you lie to yourself with some abstraction, attributing reality into an objectification based on some literal interpretation of sensory perception. Simply put, you can't go anywhere until you've cultivated the clarity that reveals the context of reality to be the mind. Hence, while it's good that you're not convinced that anything exists because you do not believe that the substance of reality must adhere to your initial basic assumptions as a supposed entity within it, you should be sure not to let this uncertainty become an impediment to the truth of what's always absolutely certain. What is the substance of reality? Seems you already suspect that it isn't any assumed identity, and it seems that you also suspect that it isn't necessarily any object or environment with whom an assumed identity can interact. So, if not any of these things, then what else can it be? In answering, don't think about it. You've made implications that you think you can arrive at truthful conclusions through reasoning and abstractions. Unfortunately, this couldn't be further from the truth. The moment you contemplate, the game is already lost. The murky oppression of the overthinking brain always clouds up the crystal clear vision of pure, crisp lucidity. All that needs be done is to simply become aware. To awaken to reality as the full extent of what is actually always already the case. This brings us to the domain of the pure lucid mind. It's not a god or a universe. It's the pure mind. For what else would be giving a universe or a god context? You seem to come a bit closer to this realization with your latter proposition. That is, existence is but the preoccupation of the existence-centric mindset. This is a useful observation, as long as you can resist the unconsciously ingrained tendency to always seek to contextualize the field of the mind into some sort of objectification. You think an objectification is a solid, and the content of the mind is abstract. But, in fact, your idea of an objectification is abstract, and the very field of the mind is the true solid. This is a trap that most assumed identities fall into. Beyond the existence created within the imagination of a pure mind, what else would a supposed identity initially assume about the substance of reality? Unfortunately, a whole lot. And this is how the matter becomes quickly misconstrued, as you can't rightfully explicate the substance of existence if you are adopting an ideological stance upon a faulty premise. That's why people think that knocking on a table proves something, or that the pain that results from getting pinched is some indication of an objectification. Hence, this is exactly how matter itself becomes misconstrued, as the externalization mindset conditioning is hinged on an assumption that physicality is primary and that awareness is a byproduct. This is the foundation of mental slavery. To keep the truth free and clear, you definitely don't need logic. So it matters not how blurry or focused the logic becomes. Reality is the substance of pure mind, not an analytical tool used to create equations to be employed as symbolic representations of reality. And the same goes for accumulating information, sensible reasoning, or organizational abstractions. Ontology is concerned with study and learning about what may exist when considered intellectually. None of that shit deals in the truth of the ontic. That is, the raw truth about what is. And so we've come to the part where you've implied the transmutation of your ideas into questions. Thus, I will parse and dissect the inquiries with systematic comprehensibility. Question: isn't infinite everything a little too messy to be plausible? Answer: it depends on what you mean. Although I don't think messy would be the proper descriptor. Is infinite everything plausible as an independently existing concrete physical configuration? Not really. A physical context cannot exist without boundaries, and if there are boundaries, everything can't be infinite. The mistake is to assume this idea of material objectivity. Infinite everything is completely plausible in the imagination of the pure mind. It's not that an infinite everything is continually existing in some actual physical location, but that the raw potential for an infinite amount of anythings to manifest always continually exists in a nowhere. You must come to understand the nuance of this difference. Question: could the premise of existence be an immature notion? Answer: it depends on what the premise is. Although a premise itself implies the theoretical, which is already way off base. Notions about reality are not the reality. An idea about existence isn't the existence. Is this intellectual practice immature? Certainly. It's the most common tendency of the novice existential explorer. But the way to maturate out of this impetuous exercise is to either quiet down the noise of the mind, or to create some space between the clarity of awareness and the noise of the mind. However you foster the breakdown of the mind's attachment to the mind's identity as the noise of the mind, doesn't matter, as long as you can get the job done, one way or another. The noise of the mind doesn't determine the sum of an existence. Existence isn't a hypothesis. The field of the mind itself is the foundation of existence. There is an awareness of phenomena, and this in itself can be called the composition of an existence. It's quite easy, even easy peasy. It's only when you start to formulate theories about the awareness of experience that you begin to run into trouble. Question: why would our surroundings be as simple as we are? Answer: who's we? And are we located in surroundings? The issue here is misidentification. There isn't any objectified surroundings, just as there isn't any objectified identity. Both are equally illusion, and in this sense might find an equivalence in their basic simplicity. An atom, a molecule, a tree, a rock, water, a biological form, a terrestrial body, all equally comprised of the same compositional foundation. Illusion. What is aware of illusion? Question: players of a game must adhere to the rules of the game, but does the game also have to adhere to those same rules? Answer: the game provides the player a set of rules, so it would follow that the game would uphold its own rules. A game, to even be considered a game, must have framework. And whenever there is a framework, rules will apply. So yes, within a set of borders, there are settings that are going to be consistent. But it's not really correct to ask if the game has to follow the rules, because the game isn't a player. The game isn't in a position to adhere. The game is in the position of provision. The game itself is a field of engagement, which in this case is strictly the field of the mind, not a physical environment. Question: could the purposelessness of everything be an indicator that it does not actually exist? Answer: everything is purposeless? Do you not find the purpose of things? Tell me if you can find purpose in any of these things. Seems anything might serve a purpose, but things require a subject to fulfill this capacity. So wherein is the purposelessness of everything? But I know what you really mean. You imagine you are located in some cosmological spectrum called the universe, and your consciousness is but a speck of celestial byproduct, and the universe is the grand ultimate context, and is an infinite empty vastness, cold and impersonal, with no objective purpose to be found anywhere. And if only this were true, then you'd be completely right. But it isn't true. Because the universe isn't a physical space to be occupied by a physical creature. Everything that is apparently manifested does not actually exist, and there's many indications of this. But a better rephrase of the question would be, is a lack of objective purpose an indication of the illusory nature of perceptual phenomena? Yes, and there are many clues available pointing towards this. The key with this is understanding what a term like exist refers to. Existence isn't a locality. Existence is the dream of a locality, located in the pure mind. It's not even located in the pure mind, but is the imagination of the pure mind itself. And lastly, question. Can everything actually exist within nothing? Answer. Everything doesn't actually exist. There isn't any actual objects. The truth is that the entirety of the perceptual phenomena experience that we call a reality is all but an illusion of pure mind. Pure mind is your true identity. Pure mind is made out of nothingness. Smoke on that. And right off the bat, before we go any further, I want to suspend and smite. Thus, it's no real surprise that JunkFlex's friend said, "Oh, fuck you, motherfucker." Nobody agrees. Nobody agrees. Nobody agrees. Nobody agrees.